Hello, lovely people. Did you see what happened yesterday? A guy named Charles Adelson was just convicted of hiring a hitman to murder his former brother-in-law. And one of the most incriminating things about the case against him was the fact that he said to many people that buying a TV for his sister is cheaper than hiring a hitman.
Do you recall making a joke that buying her a TV was cheaper than hiring a hitman? Something to that effect.
Yeah, when I gave her the TV set as a divorce present, I said, I was going to get you a hitman, but the TV set was a lot cheaper, so I went with the TV set instead. And I said it as a complete joke, and it was stupid.
He actually said those words to several people.
Did you make that joke to others?
Yes.
Did you make that joke many times throughout 2013 and 2014?
I recycled the joke.
And then people he said that to repeated it to other people. And fast forward a few years, he is actually convicted of doing that very thing, hiring a hitman. Charles Adelson says, it was a joke. It was just a bad joke. That's what I'm going to focus on in this video. The fact that someone tried to use the it was just a joke defense after saying something so totally incriminating. But in case you aren't familiar with the case, here's a little bit of background. And if you're interested in watching the entire trial, I'll put links in the description so you can go to them quickly. The victim in this case is a law professor from Florida State University named Dan Markel. In 2014, he was executed at point blank range while sitting in his car in his own garage. 3 other people have already been convicted for this specific murder, including the shooter, the getaway driver, and the woman who made the arrangement with the 2 other killers. And she's the one who transferred payment from Charles Adelson to the killers. So in this case, the prosecutors are following the money. The woman who acted as a go-between, Katie McBanawa, is a former girlfriend of Charles Adelson. And one of the people she paid for the hit was her ex-husband, Sigfredo Garcia. And apparently Sigfredo and his associate, who went to do the killing, are members of a Miami gang called the Latin Kings. No one is questioning whether lots of money exchanged hands between Charles Adelson and Katie because there's mounds of proof that the money was exchanged. So since there was no question that money exchanged hands, and since 3 of the people who received the money are now convicted for that actual murder, the defense had to come up with a reason that Adelson would have paid over $100,000 to Katie McBanawa. To explain all of this, the defense dropped a last-minute Hail Mary and failing defense by saying that Adelson was being extorted.
You will learn that Charlie Adelson was told if he didn't pay within the next 48 hours, he or one of his family members would be next.
Obviously, it didn't work because it was preposterous, but it did make for a fascinating trial where you're left trying to decide whether the defendant was being victimized by the same people who killed his brother-in-law or whether he was part of the plot that resulted in the murder of his brother-in-law. And that's a fine line to weave. It was a difficult job for the prosecutor, but she ended up nailing it down. Now, as I said before, those are just the basics that you need to know for this video, but there's so much more to it. There have been many trials on this case leading up to today, but I want to focus on this it was just a joke defense. Again, the quote-unquote joke was this.
I said, I was going to get you a hitman, but the TV set was a lot cheaper, so I went with the TV set instead.
Let's break down this quote-unquote joke of jokes. First of all, for something to be a joke, doesn't it need to be funny? Is this actually funny? Who actually thinks it's funny to joke about a hitman for your sister's husband? I had a partner once who would insult me in front of other people. And when I gave him the side eye, when he would do that, he would say, it was just a joke. You used to be able to take jokes. And I would say, for something to be a joke, it needs to be funny.
Some things are too personal to be jokes, y'all.
In case you're confused about this, it is not funny to joke about hiring a hitman for the father of your nephews. Now, here's another thing about this quote-unquote joke. What kind of a person even has it in their mind to joke about a hitman? If you aren't even thinking of hiring a hitman, How would that idea even enter into your brain? Your answer may be something like, well, it was just a joke in bad taste. It didn't need to come from anywhere nefarious. Well, fair enough. It's true that people can be a bit random, sometimes cruel and creative with their jokes. But how often do you see a guy joking about a hitman who's also giving over $100,000 to a woman with ties to organized crime? Obviously, the joke came from a place of truth. And that's where a lot of jokes come from, right? For a joke to even scratch the surface of being funny, there needs to be a kernel of truth in it. And that's why it was funny to Charles Adelson, but not as funny to the people he said it to, because they don't know the absolute truth behind that statement until now, when it was all put on Front Street on trial. But here's what I think is the most important part of trying to use that it was just a joke defense. The most important part is that the jury didn't buy that bullshit defense. And to me, that's a great, great sign that the general culture is becoming aware of the fact that there are certain people who have different agendas in their speech. There are certain people who will use speech not to tell the truth, but to control and manipulate. To me, it means that a jury of 12 people know somehow that up against all of the other evidence, saying that an admission of guilt was a bad joke will simply not fly. And that gives me hope for the future, because a lot of people do get away with doing terrible things by trying to pass it off as a joke. The commonly accepted term for someone who uses the it's a joke defense to manipulate people is narcissist. I mean, even if a person isn't a narcissist, people will say, oh, well, you're just a narcissist because you're using the it's a joke defense. I personally really hate the use of that label, narcissist, because it's widely misunderstood and it, in all honesty, requires a mental health diagnosis. So we don't know if we call somebody a narcissist, whether really a narcissist or not. And even though I publish community posts a lot that use the term narcissist, I do this because it's used so pervasively. You just can't get away from it. But every time I do, I think, damn, I wish there was a better word for this, because the word narcissist is stuffed with so many misperceptions and misunderstandings. And it blocks a lot of people from trying to get a deeper understanding because they think, we're just talking in psychological terms now. To that end, I want to propose a new word for what is commonly considered a narcissist, or for people who use controlling language and behavior on a regular, frequent, patterned basis. And that new word I want to propose is controllicist. Because various behaviors that are exhibited by a narcissist come down to attempting to control other people or groups. Why do controllists manipulate? Because they want to control what people think about them. Why do controllists gaslight? Because they want to control how the other person thinks of themselves. Why do controllists triangulate? Because they want to control what a person's friends or family think of themselves or the other person they're trying to control. Why do controllists deflect or distract in arguments? Because they want to control the conversation into an area that does not focus on their own accountability. Why do controllists intimidate and threaten people? Because they want to control what people say or do through fear. When Charles Adelson said,
I was going to get you a hitman, but the TV set was a lot cheaper, so I went with the TV set instead.
He was low-key intimidating people with it, because anyone hearing that will walk away with two impressions. First, that Charles has the means to hire a hitman, and two, that Charles has hire a hitman on his list of things to do to settle a nasty custody battle. But why? If you're going to actually go through with hiring a hitman after making a joke like that to several people, why incriminate yourself by saying it, even if it's just a really bad joke? Well, I actually agree with what the prosecutor says about that.
Arrogance. This was not an issue for him because he wasn't going to get caught, because he was untouchable.
But to expound on what the prosecutor said even further, controllists suffer under a number of delusions. And one of those delusions is that they can get away with anything because they are in control, because they're so smart, because they're so much smarter than everybody else, right? Controlists think they have the ability to control things they simply can't control. They think that if they engage in an observable pattern of behavior that points directly to guilt, they can talk their way out of it by controlling the way people think, including insulting people's intelligence by saying, hey, it was just a joke. Well, now we know, based on this high-profile case where a man was just convicted of murder after trying to pull off the "it was a joke" defense, we know that people see that for what it is. It was an incriminating statement by a person who had consciousness of guilt and tried to manipulate and control his way out of it. So big kudos to the jury for not buying into this control assist bullshit. And since the "it's a joke" defense didn't work for Charles Adelson, and he's now a convicted murderer, there are also 2 or 3 other members of the Adelson family who were intimately involved in this conspiracy but haven't been charged yet. And when the prosecutor was asked whether more charges are coming, she said,
I don't know the answer to that question yet. So stay tuned.
So it'll be interesting to see if the other toxic members of the Adelson family attempt to gaslight another jury by saying that what they said was not what they said, or by making a bad joke and trying to pull it off as a joke. As the DA said, stay tuned, and I'll see you in the next video.